Greetings, friends. Welcome to episode 124 of Into the Necrosphere, a special Friday episode of the podcast. And on this installment of the show, I am talking to Chelsea Murphy, Tony Thomas, and Yuri Kononov of Cailleach Calling. I spoke a couple of weeks back about their new record, their debut record, Dreams of Fragmentation, that is available right now on Deborah Morty Productions. I raved about it then, and as I have continued to listen to it, I have continued to like it more and more, which is why I wanted to get them on the podcast to find out more about the band. And they very graciously did a track-by-track breakdown for me of every single song. So lots of fun having them on. It's the first time I've had three people on the podcast at the same time. Tricky balancing it, but I think we got there, and it was a really fun conversation. If you're new to the podcast, remember to hit that subscribe button, follow the show on social media, head over to the Teespring store and pick yourself out a t-shirt or a hoodie or a jogger or whatever else grabs your fancy. And then also, once you're done listening to this thrilling installment of Into the Necrosphere and you're wondering, what do I listen to next? Head over to Everything Went Black, Necromaniacs, the Horrible 666 podcast, and Iblis Manifestations, the brother podcasts of Into the Necrosphere. I am going to be back on Tuesday with Alex Jones of Undeath, and because this is a special Friday episode, there's going to be no news, reviews, or anything like that. Just some straight talk with the folks of Cailleach Calling, and then maybe I'll throw in a little rarity to play us out at the end. But thanks for checking out the podcast. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. This is the three musical geniuses that make up Cailleach Calling. So welcome to the show, guys. And I think this is the first time I'm running a conversation with three people. So I'm probably going to sound at some points here like I'm running one of my conference calls at work, just to kind of make sure that everyone is stays part of the conversation. But I think probably best place to start very quickly. Could all three of you introduce yourselves? And I'm also particularly keen, just so that everybody knows how ridiculously busy you are, because I mentioned off air that I don't do a huge amount of prep, but I obviously know a bit about your backgrounds. I know you guys all have multiple bands on the go. So I'm keen to, for you to tell us who you are, but also, tell us about all of the other bands that you're in outside of Cailleach Calling.
Sure. I guess I'll start. So Tony Thomas, I do guitar, bass, and synth, and I would say I'm responsible for all the arrangements and songwriting for this project. Chelsea and I also play in another band called Dawn of Ouroboros. We call it black and progressive metal. It's like prog metal with black metal influences. Then I also play in the avant-garde band Botanist. I do bass in that band because we don't use guitars, we use the hammered dulcimers. And those would be my three primary bands. And then I have some other like studio bands. One's is called Ophidian Forest, which is more of like a raw black metal thing with a member here in the States, another member in the Netherlands. And then I have a technical metal band that doesn't really do much at the time called Sentient Ignition, where one of our members, the primary songwriter, is in Sweden. So everything moves really slow with that one.
Cool. All right. And Chelsea?
I'm Chelsea Murphy. I do vocals, and Tony already mentioned our other band, Dawn of Ouroboros. On top of that, I do a progressive technical deathcore, I don't even know what to call it, band called Fragmentation, and we'll be releasing soon. Our album's done, so we're ramping up. And then I have some other projects that are like unreleased. I'm always busy with music, and on top of that I do session vocals, and I have quite a few projects in the mix for that as well. Some that will be released from what I hear soon, so I'll be making announcements for that.
I wanted to talk to you a bit about vocals in a second, but we'll get to that shortly. Yuri, you're up.
I'm Yuri. I'm the drummer, and considering my other projects, I play in the band Pure Wrath, and also I have the band named Soractonus. working on the new album, and loads of studio projects of various genres outside of metal. So it will be a bit too long to mention them all here. So I guess we'll just stay at this.
And you also used to be the drummer in White Ward, if I'm not mistaken, which Tim in the Amenta very kindly introduced me to.
Yeah, I played with them in periods of between 2012 and 2017, and Futility Report album was the last record I did with them.
Awesome. So how did the three of you guys connect? Obviously, you know, Chelsea and Tony, you had been in a band already.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe that's the best place to start. How, you know, in terms of the connection in Dawn of Ouroboros, how long have you known each other? How long have you worked together? And I normally I don't really ask questions like that, but I feel like I feel like these three people have captured lightning in a bottle. And the more I listen to this new record, the more I absolutely love it. So I'm kind of keen to understand where that chemistry came from, how this, you know, how these three forces converged.
Okay. So Chelsea and I met in 2016 in another band that we don't really care to talk about very much, but
Yes.
that band didn't really end well.
A scandal-ridden story, or is
Yeah,
it?
we'll leave it at that.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, and then neither of us had like started our own band before after that. And it's like, well, let's just try starting our own project. And that would be Dawn of Ouroboros. And then that was like received well beyond we ever had expected it to be. And then that just kind of opened a lot of doors to be able to interact with other musicians, kind of, I guess, having a resume established for the first time. But it's like, oh, this is something people listen to. And yeah, that's kind of how we got started together. And then for this project, I think it was about a year ago, I just wanted to make like a straightforward black metal album. Well, straightforward by, you know, my standards, I guess. And I wanted to be like super like and spontaneous. So, you know, wrote the whole album in a month. And then I can let you take over how you did the vocals.
Okay. For the vocals, I felt it would be better if it was a majority improvised. So roughly 85% of that album was all improvised with lyrics and vocal performance. For me, I feel like it really tapped into a new level of black metal for me. I don't know. It was fun. I had a lot of fun with it, a lot of experimentation, and I learned a lot about myself, I guess. So I enjoyed it.
So I'm curious about that, because there's only one other person I've come across that does a lot of improvisation, or at least, you know, will do no rehearsal when he goes in and records his vocals, and that's Gol from of he of Gorgoroth and wine sipping Satan fame. But what is that like? And okay, first of all, what made you decide to do that? And then secondly, what is it like actually being in a studio and doing that? Like, do you have like a rough idea before you go into the vocal booth to start recording of what you're going to do? I guess, or how does the spirit move you to get to where you know ultimately are in the end product?
Okay, so my motive for doing it was to be more emotional. I feel like when you're performing on the spot like that, there's a little more anxiety involved, which really feeds well into black metal vocals. I had actually previously done this one other time. It was actually with Tony's band Botanist. I did the full song Dehydration on their album Photosynthesis. And I had briefly gone over the song before going into the studio. And as I got to the studio, I started to feel very sick. I was like, oh God, what am I doing? I'm overconfident. And it worked out really well. Like, I was like, okay, so this is something I can experiment more with. And that led me to think, okay, the shrills I got on the Botanist song were pretty cool, what if I take that farther? And that's how I decided to do the Cailleach Calling the way I did.
Yeah. Which sounds, I commented on this when I reviewed the record. It sounds very inhuman, which is part of why I loved it so much. It reminded me of another Debo Memorti release, the Inferno record that came out last year, Paradigma, where you kind of have this, it's sort of this omnipresent, like I don't know if you can call it a growl, but you know what I mean? It's like this omnipresent voice in the background that makes the music that much more haunting and that much more atmospheric. And as much as I love that Paradigma record, I did say, much to to compliment you, I think that you kind of did something similar, but I think this record actually does it a lot better than Paradigma. I think that sort of, like I said, that inhuman, otherworldly presence is sort of there throughout all of the songs, and it's done exceedingly well. But how long have you been singing for? Because I've also, now we do happen to have a couple of friends in common on Facebook, so I have heard your clean vocals too, and obviously I can hear your clean vocals on this track. You've got such a beautiful voice, and then you're able to create such fucking demonic shit when you're when you're screaming. Actual singing, when did you start?
It was like a coping mechanism for me as like a child, and so I'd sing all the time. And it was something that was very personal to me, and I felt very vulnerable doing it in front of other people. So I really kept that to myself for like until last 3-4 years or so. And I stuck to just doing brutal vocals, which is kind of like my mask within vocals, I would say. And then at some point I like got to the healing grounds enough to where I was like, I'm going to share my clean singing voice as well. And I think it's been received better than I thought it would, because, you have your own self-critical thoughts where you're like, oh, no one's going to like this. It's so different from what I do. So it actually has been received quite well, and it's lovely.
Yeah. Aaron Stainthorpe, actually, of My Dying Bride, when I had him on the podcast, he mentioned to me that when he first started doing clean singing in My Dying Bride, he would turn his back on the band in the rehearsal room and pull his shirt over his head.
Yeah.
And Nick Holmes had a similar story. It was like he didn't want to hear himself sing. Like he felt really, really embarrassed doing that. So you're in good company as far as that's concerned. But I'm curious, what were some of the first singers or vocalists that you were drawn to, inspired by, like some of the first songs that you were singing, or that that kind of almost suited your voice, if you understand what I mean?
Who would I consider my inspirations?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking specifically sort of early inspirations. The first songs you can remember yourself singing or wanting to sing.
I loved Carole King. She's a singer-songwriter. I loved her so much, and total flower child, just always listened to her records, and I have a lot of respect for that lady. Other than that, I loved like Judy Garland and just kind of the older generation stuff. Like as even a young kid, I would listen to that. I guess that would be like my early inspirations.
And as time has progressed, so what I've picked up in your voice is a slight lilt of Stevie Nicks, and again, to me that's a big compliment, because I have, thanks to Matt Wilcock of Antichrist Imperium and Werewolves, I've developed a bit of an obsession with rumors in particular, but especially Stevie's voice on that record. There's like something that I've picked up in the way you sing that reminds me a little bit of her.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And then the screaming and things like that. When did you start doing that? Because again, for somebody who can sing that well, the control that you have in your voice when you're doing black metal vocals, is, amazing.
Thank you. I started around 17 or so. I'm 29 now, so 12 years ago. The band that inspired me to start is not. It's As I Lay Dying is who inspired me to start.
As I Lay Crying.
Yeah, I know. Not a great band anymore. A lot of dark history there, but they did inspire me to start, and for that I have a lot of respect for them in that sense.
There is a lot of dark history there, and one thing I'm very surprised by is how, like, ever since I understand, you serve your time, you come out, and you've done your piece, but I mean, the dude tried to kill his wife, and people have seemed to be extraordinarily accepting of him coming back. Like there's like mainstream acceptance. Like, oh yeah, no, he seems like a nice guy now. I'm a bit surprised by that. I've never been a fan, so
it's a big divide on that.
yeah. But so Tony, I'm curious to know with this record, because there's so much to unpack when you listen to the albums, and this was another comment that I made when I reviewed it, and I feel like when I read reviews of it, it's the same. You know, there's a lot of differences, and I want to touch on those too. But there's one thing that to me is a clear theme, and that's that it will take people many listens to get through this. So I couldn't believe when you just said it took you did this all in a month.
Yeah.
Did you have any kind of idea in the back of your mind about what it might sound like? Or I guess to what degree was this just spontaneous creative expression?
Probably 90% spontaneous creative expression. So I didn't really have any plan going into what I wanted this to sound like. Generally, that's kind of my writing process, is I just, pick a tempo, maybe some chords, and then I just kind of jam
and
out.
then the satanic ritual invocations, and then
I just
start
kind of
playing,
jam out to like a drum beat or something until or something like I like what this sounds like, and then that's kind of how I approach everything. As far as all the synths I use, it's just like I try not to use the same ones. If I use them in a song, I try not to use them in another song, and that I think adds more variety to the atmosphere. And pretty spontaneous. I would like to say I had a much broader goal and like a vision with what this was initially supposed to be, but not really. But it was developed as we went along with it, based on how the overall sound of the record was, and like the type of emotions that it invoked in imagery, which is really important to me. It's music needs to like make me visualize something for me to connect with it, or like feel something emotionally.
And so in terms of your own musical background, when did it start for you? When did you decide that you were going to have several bands going at any given time and devote most of your free time to playing guitar and writing music?
So I started playing a little later than most people do. So I'm 38 now, but I started playing at like 21. And at the time I was like really into like Death and Atheist and like Mayhem, and then some other older like 90s technical metal bands. So I was kind of into the technical stuff at first, and like shredding. And then I played in kind of a dissonant mid 2000s kind of groove band for a while, and I just stayed in one band. And then I decided to go to college, and then went to college, and that kind of came focused. And I think there's about 2 years where I didn't even play guitar. And then I went to school to get a PhD, just absolutely hated it, and then went back into music full force after that. And then I would say just once I started getting more into writing my own music, I just kind of found that really exhilarating. Prior to that, I was joining other people's bands and just playing other people's music. And, it was fun, but it didn't have the same connection that I get from creating now. And that just kind of like opened sort of an addictive doorway to creativity, where I just always want to be working on something or creating something new.
It's funny you mentioned Atheist, because I didn't pick it up straight away, but now that you mention it, like I can definitely hear, a degree of influence, but in the way that you play guitar from that band. I've had Kelly on the podcast quite a few times. Have you met him before?
No, I have not.
He's a fucking cool dude. I'm going to make sure that he knows about you guys as well. But
no complaints.
Your PhD, out of interest, sake, what was that in?
It was going to be in molecular biology. I did it for a year and dropped out. Currently, I work as a a molecular biologist, but in the industry setting. So it's kind of go home, do laboratory research, and I'm thinking about metal the whole time, and then go home and work on music. And it gives me
my dad did his PhD in molecular biology. So interesting you say that. And one of the most metal guys that I know, and probably one of the people that had the biggest influence on me, as far as the kind of music that I got into particularly when I was young, he's got a PhD in molecular biology as well. Interestingly enough, he also didn't like it. What put you off, pursuing and completing the PhD?
There's just a level of passion and devotion that I felt is required. Like, it needs to be your hobby as well. It's not just going to school like a bachelor's degree is. Like, there's no real, like, you're creating the curriculum and the direction of what you're doing. You're basically in charge, and you have an advisor who just gives you feedback. And like, I like to think about other stuff and go home and do other things. This is requiring a much higher level of devotion that I feel that I can commit to do this genuinely.
Yeah. My dad used to tell me the thing that he hated was, like, you could be working on a particular hypothesis for months and months and months, and it doesn't come off. And all of the work that you did before that is for naught. I think that's what got to him, and I can tell you right now, nothing scientific will carried across the gene pool whatsoever. So Yuri, how did you connect with these two?
Phil, the founder of our label Devil Morty, he wrote me an email and asked me if I would like to record drums for this new band. He sent me the demos, and I was blown away. I really liked them. And when I heard this section with the clean vocals, I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely in. So it was very simple. I just recorded drums, and then the guys asked me to invited me to join the band as a full-time member. So I agreed. That's it.
How did the Deborah Morty relationship happen? And I asked that too because I'm such a massive fan of that label. I mean, I think people probably will start thinking that the show is sponsored by Deborah Morty because of how often I talk about them. But I mean, it's just like they, to me, have become, alongside Season of Mist, one of those labels where I don't necessarily like every single thing that comes out that they do, but when I see the Deborah Morty logo on a record, I'm immediately, at least I'm interested. Like, I want to know what it sounds like. And I think in the last, for my top 20s of the last 2 years, I think they've had at least, I know in 2020 they had four bands in the top 5, and then I think in 2021 I think it's about 3. So they've got a pretty good innings as far as I'm concerned, and I would be hard pressed to say Cailleach Calling isn't going to be a pretty strong contender unless there's fucking miracles happening in 2022 to be in that prestigious list as well.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Phil knows what he's doing. He has pretty good taste in what bands he chooses to work with.
And how did you guys get to know him, and how did this connection happen? Because your other band is not on Deborah Morty, right?
No. We have a new record label that's not announced yet, so we'll hold on.
I thought you were about to say not yet.
But I sent him an email, just the old-fashioned demo submission. And then
okay.
He responded positively, and then we communicated for a while before coming up with an agreement that worked best for both of us.
And it's very cool that he thought enough of the demo to connect you with Yuri and say, here's a guy that can play the drums for you as well.
Yeah.
So with getting Yuri in the band full time, was there an ambition to, once all the madness of present day is behind us, which is hopefully going to be sooner rather than later, to start playing this music live?
Yeah, there's definitely a plan, since we've been talking about it since probably last fall of, like, well, let's see how this goes, but we definitely want to play live. I have other people, most likely it would just be in Europe, due to Yuri's location, and the other people I would have on like guitar and bass are also in Europe. But if we can do it, I'd be very much interested in doing this.
Yeah,
a tour over there.
One of the things that I first picked up in reviews that I read was the comment around the album cover, and I think I think Man of Much Metal said it has nothing to do with it. It feels like it's got nothing to do with the music, and I was confused by that. And again, mentioned this in my own review. I was like, for me, my interpretation of the music was, if a black metal band had done the soundtrack to Drive, this is what it would have sounded like. So to me, that album cover captured the music perfectly. But I was kind of keen to get your take on, I guess, firstly, where the idea came from, and then secondly, whether I'm most interested to know whether my read was correct or whether I'm completely out.
That's I listened to your review before, and it's my favorite review quote of anything. So
he's mentioned it several times. So
good. Get David Mortis to start putting the sticker on the CD that they ship out.
Yeah. So we did all the photos and the art. Like I did those. The album was written, and it was kind of the feel that I was getting from it is kind of like a night city mixed with like kind of the cosmic thing. And that's just a picture of San Francisco that we took on a hill at like midnight.
Yeah.
Climbing
through bushes on hillsides together.
Yeah. So there was at least, you were on a hill, because like I said, one of the I think it was Man of Much Metal that said, it reminds him of, which is fair. I mean, I think these sorts of things are great. It's great that it's open to interpretation. But I think he said that it reminded him of like the mountains in Norway and stuff like that. But I definitely picked up like that urban alienation vibe that you have, that's a very strong theme, throughout Drive. I definitely picked it up, and that's what made the record sound so unique and so interesting to me, because there's definitely familiarity to it. If you listen to black metal for a lengthy period of time, straight away it's a black metal record.
Right.
Like there's that undercurrent that's very interesting. Like the only other band I think that it's done that really, really well was Voices when they did London, and that's coming from a different angle. It's not, I think this is definitely, if you think of US black metal, this is definitely a great example of top-notch US black metal, whereas Voices has a decidedly English slant. But like I said, I could definitely pick up that undercurrent in the record.
Yeah, I was listening to the Voices album a couple of weeks ago. I'm not the biggest fan of the vocals on it, but I thought the album was pretty good.
How dare you? You need to listen to the new record. It's absolutely incredible. I'm London is probably my favorite, but the new one in particular is absolutely amazing. But so one of the things I was keen to do is to go through all four of the tracks, and I'm kind of keen to, particularly now that I know how organically everything sort of developed, I'm particularly keen to sort of get a beat from the two of you on, what some of the themes are around them, how those tracks came to be. So if we start with the first one, talk to me about Phospheric Array. Phosphenic, sorry.
Yeah, those are, I'll just give an overview of the title. So phosphenes are mechanical inducing your light sensors in your eyes. So if you ever pushed on your eyes and you start seeing kind of lights, those are called phosphenes. And then, just combine it with the word array to kind of give it a psychedelic feeling to it. But this was the first song that I wrote for it, and just kind of painted the direction of what the black metal aspect of the record was going to be for me. Just kind of established what the basic sound would be. And put a lot of, I wanted the synths to be really spacey feeling. I guess I did kind of have like a mild cosmic black metal thing in mind when I started writing this. And I wouldn't say the album is hi-fi, but I originally had like much more lo-fi in mind. As we developed on, that didn't really feel like the right choice anymore.
It does sound very good, by the way, on a decent setup. I'm a big time audiophile sound nerd, so not that I would be put off listening. I mean, because otherwise I would never have listened to Blaze in the Northern Sky as many times as I have. But I whenever I'm listening to a record to review it, I'll always listen to it on my hi-fi, because I think then you're going to get the best. You're going to give it the best chance of being, giving it a fair shake. But it does sound, I mean, sonically, it does sound really, really good. Where did you record it?
I recorded.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
like home studio?
Home recording. Obviously, the drums were recorded in the studio, but everything else, the home studio. I did the mixing, and then we had our friend Deha. He did the mastering. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but if you're not, check him out. He's very prolific.
Okay. And what's your setup like at home?
So I have a iMac. I use Logic. That's my recording software. Guitars and other instruments I run direct. I was using plugins for all the amps on this. For my synths, I like to use Omnisphere, which is sort of, Jordan Rudess was a big proponent of it from Dream Theater, so he probably uses some of that stuff too. It's been used on movies. I think the newest Blade Runner had a lot of Omnisphere used on it. Which,
by the way, the Blade Runner score is absolutely incredible. Yeah. Amazing. And then Chelsea, you recorded all your vocals there as well, right?
Yes, yeah. Luckily, we can record at all hours. So things like round glitch.
Got a froze here.
Some external producer sitting behind a glass window going, we're on time, take 5 or whatever the case may be.
Sorry, I think it glitched out a little bit. Can you repeat?
Oh no, I was saying, like, if you at least being in that kind of environment, I would imagine being, if you're going to take that improvisational approach to doing your vocals, it would be at least a little bit less stressful than having a producer on the other side of a glass window going, take 7 or whatever the case may be.
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, at least for my own bands, I will not work with people I'm not vibing with. My sound engineer down in California, he is an amazing person. I vibe really well with him. Like, the creative flow is awesome. The vibes are all good. So I've been working with him for like 5 or 6 years. And then, of course, Tony's like my favorite person in the world. So it's easy to work with him and just be free and be me or whatever. So yeah, it's really important for me to have a good, healthy feeling in the room in order to just experiment.
I was going to ask, back to my lightning in a bottle comment earlier, what is it that kind of, obviously the two of you have been working together for a while now. What is it that makes the relationship work? And, what is the dynamic like when you're in the creative process? Is there a lot of friction? Is it, what does that look like?
Let's see here. I'm kind of like, I'm okay with pretty much everything. Like, it's like, just do whatever. That's kind of, I think gives us a unique aspect to the music we do. We don't really go in with what it's supposed to sound like. And then as far as like the vocals, I'll like suggest, I'm like, oh, this makes me kind of feel this thing. Maybe try to do something that captures that. But even then, she'll just do what she wants.
But okay, and I do what I want. No, he's really accepting of the creative freedom. And I mean, likewise with him, I'm like, oh, I'm not a guitarist, but I do have opinions sometimes. I'm like, oh, what if you change this note to like this? Or, I walk by, I go, oh, why don't we change that to this? And it works, like, we respect each other. We accept no's with no problem. We're not egotistical. And yeah, it just works. I don't know. Tony's very easygoing. And then I feel like
he strikes me as incredibly intense, though. Probably quite a guy who loses temper really easily.
Tony's temper is almost non-existent. If anything, I'm the sassy one.
Yeah. The so if we kind of stick with that first track, I mean, lyrically, I would assume, so you would have listened to the music beforehand, and then you go in and you start doing your vocals. what came out of that session for the first track in terms of themes, ideas, things that you injected into that track?
Vocally,
Yeah.
I was reading something. I was like a long lost play from like 1930s. I'm trying to recall what I was reading at the time. But anyways, that fueled a lot of my vibes. It was the gist of the book, and the story is like being lost at sea and like murder and stuff of that nature. So like a lot of ocean vibes fueled like my thoughts at that time. Just floating in water. I don't know, honestly. I was just kind of vibing with it.
And so the lyrics, you kind of it sounds like you're translating imagery as I guess as you're interpreting the music, and that's creating an image in your mind that's then being translated into what the lyrics end up sounding like.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let's talk next about Bound by Neon.
Yeah. Let's see, I kind of started that one as just a synth track, as reasonably evident in the beginning. I felt, as this one developed, it definitely has the most like urban atmosphere to it. So I would, this is also, I think, it's my favorite song on the album. But
it was mine too, by the way, and I think it's probably the song that gave me those Drive vibes most. Like the first thing I thought about was the opening scene in Drive, where he's actually doing the job with those guys, and he's driving, and he's kind of quiet in the car and stuff like that. That's Bound by Neon reminded me of that scene, which is what brought that analogy into play when I reviewed the record.
Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, I think he captured the same imagery that I was imagining with this track perfectly. Yeah, so synth intro goes into the raging black metal, and then we have that kind of jazzy bluesy break at a certain point where she's doing a spoken word, and then right back into the black metal with kind of maybe kind of some synthwave trance kind of arpeggiated synths in the background. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, I forgot much more to say about that one. But
the spoken word, all of that stuff would have been improvised as well. Have you were you thinking of the same imagery? I just as Tony just kind of described it when you heard the song for the first time, Chelsea.
Yeah, I think honestly, a lot of this album, lyrically, the theme kind of stayed similar across the board with what I was reading at the time, and with like the whole like existential crisis of like, what are we in the universe, and all this hippy dippy stuff that I think about played a main role in the album's lyrics. But yeah, some of it was just open screaming, kind of like Ghost Bath. A little. I didn't realize at the time that like Ghost Bath had a similarity with that, even though I liked Ghost Bath a lot. But yeah, I've actually been compared to Ghost Bath a few times now from this album. And I'm like, oh, well.
That's another dude I've had on the podcast, Dennis.
Yeah,
great guy.
He is, yeah, fantastic.
yeah, he's someone we talked to.
Yeah.
No, he's an awesome guy. It was a lot of fun having him on the podcast as well. And so a couple of people said to me that they thought, well, especially after I'd reviewed the record, they thought it sounded a lot like Ghost Path as well. And again, it wasn't something I'd necessarily made the connection to straight away, but I can definitely see how people might interpret it as such.
I think with Ghost Bath, they do a lot of the emotional, like long, drawn out screams. So people are like easy association to make.
Yeah.
I'm not offended.
No, I would imagine not. So Yuri, just bringing you back into the conversation, when you I know we're talking a lot here about sort of these images that these songs evoked in our minds when we heard it, or when they were being written. What was that the same for you? Like when you heard this, did you get the same sense, or did you interpret this differently?
I think more or less the same. this universal cosmic eternal thing. I don't know how to say it, but I think it caught me just from the very beginning.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk then about the third track. So Cascading Waves being the third song, which I think I can't remember whether it was Cascading Waves or Mercurial Invasion, but it's definitely like this to me. There's a much like a good movie, you know, there's kind of an arc. This song to me, sort of the arc, and then Mercurial Waves is kind of the crescendo, you know, the finale. But yeah, talk me through this track.
Yeah, you know, has the really long ambient intro, which I think I went through. What was I imagining? Sort of like floating through, you know, deep space, and there's kind of, you know, it kind of starts as through floating through emptiness, and then when it becomes more melodic with the synths I had, it was like I wanted to make meditation, like almost like meditation music, like you're in freaking yoga class or something. But yeah, and then when the spoken word part comes in, I was imagining like a sort of like a celestial being, like that's above everything, kind of talking about like the universe creation. And in that sense, it's not talking about the death of the universe, which was the one hypothesis of how the universe will die is it just keeps expanding, and then eventually all like entropy will stop, and all the atoms will completely come to a standstill. So that's kind of what that's about. And then that continues into sort of that, you know, soft psychedelic rock kind of jam thing before going into the black metal stuff. But yeah, it's just the long crescendo of intensity.
Yeah, the kind of the calm before the storm, and then Mercurial Inversion. That's I called it Invasion earlier. Mercurial Inversion being kind of the final, you know, the finale of the record. Run me through that track.
I just wanted to make that one the most traditional in the black metal sense as far as how it sounds. So it's definitely the fastest, and I'm using predominantly minor chords as far as the chord progressions that I'm using. Usually I use a lot of chords that are more common in like jazz or fusion music, because I think it adds a lot more color, especially if you're able to get all of those notes in there. But this one, it kind of had the, you know, the older sound where it just sounds like evil. Yeah,
as it should sound.
But still with like the kind of ambientness overlaying it and everything.
Yeah. I mean, I've made many comments about it on this podcast about my thoughts on major chords in black metal, and I'm generally speaking not a fan. But that's one thing that I loved about this record as well. There's that ambience. It's something very different, but all of it maintains the appropriate sinister tone.
Yeah.
You know, like when I hear stuff like even the more black metal Death Heaven stuff, for example, it's just I listened to it quite excited to hear it because so many people had recommended it to me, and then I heard it and I just couldn't get into it, couldn't wrap my head around it. It's like,
but I think with them, I mean, we do enjoy them. I think they're using more like what your ears would interpret as a major chord. And I prefer to use more extended chords with like 7th, 9th, and even like 13th harmonies within the chords, which doesn't really, like, our ears for the most part don't hear that in a lot of music, so you don't really interpret it as this is a major chord. So even if the major intervals in there's also more minor chord intervals stacked on that, and it kind of gives it like a kind of a futuristic sound, or rather than just sounding like a major chord. So, but those are why I prefer to use those types, because it just sounds different.
Yeah.
For this type of music.
So aside from Death Heaven, are you listening to anything good? No, it popped into my head, and I thought about Between Two Ferns. You guys have seen that, right? The Zach Galifianakis when he gives celebrity shit. I just had to blurt out that question. But yeah, no, I am curious though. What music are you two and Yuri, you as well? What are you guys listening to at the moment?
I was listening to a lot of old stuff that I listened to when I was younger today. So I think there's this Polish band called Christ Agony that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't listened to them in like maybe 15 years, and
I mean that is old school, as old school as it gets.
And another one, Windham Hell, if you've ever heard of them. Yeah, so I was listening to them today. And then a group that Yuri actually told me about. I don't know how to say it correct. They're not a metal group. It's like the doom jazz stuff. The Bavaren and their Club of Gore. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but yeah, I've been listening to that. So just, I like really depressing music, essentially.
Yeah. Nothing life affirming, as Mike Hill would say.
No, pretty much just metal and stuff like that.
And Chelsea, the stuff you're liking at the moment?
I'd say my go-to is pretty much always. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Anton Balov from
No.
Kwan. Oh, he's fantastic. Beautiful, emotional composer. I really enjoy Kwan and Hirator, Alcest, all the pretty shit. Yeah, I don't know. Like, been listening to The Cure all day. Thanks, Yuri.
Oh, you're welcome.
And Yuri, your vibes at the moment, what are you listening to?
I'm expecting the new album from my favorite band of all time, which is Porcupine Tree. And while I'm expecting it, I'm listening to the back catalog right now.
Almost for some bizarre reason, I almost thought you were about to say Bluetooth Nord, which is also one of your label mates. Have you heard that new track?
I was trying to play it earlier, and she told me to turn it off.
No, because it was not. I was in the zone. I meditate a lot, so.
Okay. I was about to say you can't be meditating when that track is playing.
No.
It is. I must say I have been so blown away by that song. It's been hard for me to kind of tear myself away from listening to it and put on anything else ever since it dropped. It's there was a comment made by Ishan of Emperor the other down Blabbermouth about how The Weeknd is edgier and darker than most extreme metal. I was like, does this dude not have a fucking internet connection? I mean, it's like, how can this Bluetooth Nord record, or you guys, or I mean, you want to take it down to more basic stuff like the last Hellmilitia record I thought was awesome as well. How can that be out and then you choose to listen to The Weeknd instead? I listen to a lot of stuff that's not metal as well, but I mean, anything that Depeche Mode made after 1985 is darker than what that fool does. So,
not to mention another metal album, but have you heard Ad Nauseum?
Yes, I have.
Their most recent one from last year was a big favorite. If you want like a modern death metal album that actually sounds unique and evil instead of just, I don't know, technical.
Modern, like great evil sounding death metal, Ulcerate. That's stare into death and be still. To me, is like that to me was like one of the that's one of those records where it's a complete paradigm shift when you hear it. It's like the bar has now been raised and everyone is going to have to try and top this or just sound weak by comparison.
I put it in the same style of Ulcerate, and I kind of like Ad Nauseum more, but
how dare you? Yeah, no. When it comes to death metal, I mean, I know I'm wearing a DSI T-shirt. Really, for me, DSI is the first three records, and beyond that, Stench of Redemption has had its moments, but I'm not massively interested in anything else. I like either stuff like Ulcerate and Immolation, or things that are just barbaric, like Werewolves. So to me, Werewolves is the greatest example of what death metal, in my view, should sound like. It should make you want to destroy things. So it's like it's not supposed to be a a pretty genre. I used to really, when I was young, like you talk about Christ Agony. I remember, seeing them in the Nuclear Blast catalog, and then that was also at the time when you had all these bands like Theater of Tragedy and all these like bands that were kind of, in my view, trying to beautify the genre, and I just never liked it. I had an aversion to it. Like if I want to hear beautiful music, then I will go and listen to PJ Harvey or Fleetwood Mac or Mark Lanigan or something that's not metal. Like metal serves a purpose, and that is violence. So it's not, I don't want it to be nice. It's like watching a horror movie, but but I also want to see comedy. I don't like horror comedy as an example, so it's the same thing to me. I don't think death is funny, and I don't think people being killed is hilarious. So I don't like comedy blended with horror. Sorry, that was a side rant. But Chelsea, you mentioned earlier that you've got a couple of other kind of session projects that you're doing as well. Curious to know what those might be, unless you've been sworn to secrecy.
I can't say, but
you're not Elsa on the next Frozen movie, are you?
Oh yeah, how'd you know? No, I would do it if they called me.
I would imagine that with the money, with that Elsa money, Cailleach Calling, the sky's the limits.
Yeah. One of the albums actually released, at least the music video released yesterday. So the announcement for it should come very soon. Another one, I have some songs to turn in that I can't say yet. And then a third person is, I don't know, he just hires me for stuff sometimes, and I go, okay. Like essentially, I not extremely established musician, but I admire the enthusiasm. Yeah.
And would you ever do something where you kind of lean into your clean vocals a bit more?
Yeah, I definitely would. What have I done? I've done something. What did I do? Oh, that iGhost album. I did some cleans. I guess they're called Still Being Now. Worth a listen, I think. But yeah, I mean, I would definitely do more. It's kind of in the talks right now to do more. Yeah.
Yuri, I'd be remiss if I didn't at least ask you about this. I know we said again before we started that we weren't going to talk too much about this, but most people who listen to this know that you're based out of the Ukraine. I guess I'm not going to dwell on it long, but I just wanted to ask, how are you doing? Are you all right? What kind of generally how's everything going in your end of I guess in your immediate sphere, because we know in your end of the world how it's going.
Well, it's relatively safe here. I'm in the city of Odessa, which is in south of Ukraine, and it's a full-scale war going in our country right now. It's Russian invasion. They're bombing civilian buildings. They have turned several cities into literal mass graves right now. Which is really hard to comprehend. You can imagine mass graves in the center of Europe in 2022.
Yeah,
it still feels very surreal and very hard to comprehend. Well, at the place where I am right now, it's relatively safe. We have airstrike rate sirens several times a day. And sometimes we have to sit in the basement because you never know what's going to happen. Well, what can I say? We hope for the better.
I keep reasonably frequent communication with Vitaly of 1914, and he's when this all started, I just dropped him a line and I said, look, there's nothing one can do really from where we are in this world, but I just hope there's a foul-mouthed South African who lives in the UK who's rooting for you and who's thinking of you. So same, I'm more than anything, I'm glad to hear that you're safe, and hopefully the same can be said of your nearest and dearest as well.
Thanks.
So, folks, in terms of next things for Cailleach Calling, also for all of your other projects, what's happening in the next year?
We want to start writing for the next album. The approach this time is Yuri's gonna handle the initial drums, and then I'm gonna kind of base my songwriting about that. Probably would have done it the first time if we had known him prior to writing an album, but we're gonna take that approach this time to have his musical influence at a greater level on the structuring of the album.
And have you got any ideas you're throwing around already?
I think when he's able, he's coming up with some programmed ideas, which I haven't heard yet, but I'm excited to hear when they come along. And I'm preparing to work on it.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I keep getting ideas, but I keep trying to simmer myself so that I don't do too many pre-planned things, because I don't want to fall off course with my methods I used last time. I feel like it might sound too different if I pre-plan too much. So
I guess that's hard to do as well, because you get ideas, you get excited about them, and you sort of want to use them, but as you say, you run the risk of losing that spontaneity.
There's always the idea now of you do something once and know there's expectations now, but I like to disregard that and just I'm just gonna do whatever, and people like it, great. If not, then I'll just make another one, because that's what I like doing.
And speaking of expectations, the expectations would be pretty high for the next Dawn of Ouroboros record, considering that your Metal Archives review score right now is 95%. Is there anything happening with that band right now?
I just finished recording the final song on guitars and sent it for mixing. It's being mixed. Hopefully we'll have mastering done by mid-April, and then send it off to a record label. And then so we're pretty excited about that one.
It's a lot of really cool things I was able to do vocally on that album. Half the songs were pre-planned, half of them were improvised, and I feel like it was a really cool mix of emotions and different styles that came out. I was quite pleased with it.
Awesome. Well, folks, thank you so much for coming on the show. Great to get to know you, and particularly getting to know you in the wake of Gearing a Record that I was so impressed with. It was it was one of those things where I didn't know anything about the band. Just put the promo on, and I was like, this is fucking fantastic. I hear a lot of music, so it doesn't often happen that I get so caught on something so quickly, especially not something that complex. So yeah, really enjoyed it, and as I said, really appreciate your time.
No, thanks for having us. It's been great.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
All right, guys, take care. Speak soon.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
A massive thanks to Chelsea, Tony, and Yuri for coming on the podcast. Really fun catching up with them. And the song that you listened to was Phosphenic Array, which I stupidly called Phospheric Array on when I had my conversation with them. But great band, great song, and the record is fucking spectacular. It's called Dreams of Fragmentation. It's available on Deborah Morty Productions. Hope you guys enjoyed that special Friday episode of the podcast. Like I said, I am back next week, and I'm talking to Alex Jones of Undeath, another fucking beast of a conversation. And then coming up in probably 2 weeks' time, I'll have Sam Bean of the Antichrist Imperium and Werewolves, and then who knows who will be next. But thanks for checking out the show, as I said. I will see all of you bad motherfuckers again next week, and I'm going to play out with another Deborah Morty band. The band is from Poland. They're called OUTRE. They put out an album back in, I think this was 2017, called Hollow Earth. I am gobsmacked, quite frankly, that this does not get a lot more attention, and I really hope that they are going to be putting out some new music at some point soon. As far as I know, they don't have anything new out, but either way, this album is spectacular, and so is the song. It plays us out on this episode. It's called Let the Earth Be Silent. I will see all of you bad motherfuckers again next Tuesday.